and Councillor Larson, if you are on the line, we are just going to introduce our new Deputy Regional Fire Chief. This is Matt from administration, Chris Turcotte. We're pleased, Wheatland County is very pleased, and Fire Services as well, to have Chris on board. Chris comes to us from the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, Fort McMurray, after a decade plus extensive experience on the floor as a senior firefighter. So Chris has that experience. We're very, very thrilled to have him. Chris, if you want to say a few words, please feel free to come on down. Come on down.
Morning, everyone. So yeah, I'm Chris Turcotte, as Matt was saying, with McMurray for 11 years there. Was just helping out with training before leaving a bit, was getting ready to move into a training role there, and then this opportunity came up and was too good to pass up. And I'm actually, after 3 weeks here, I'm loving it. It's a great position, great opportunity. Mike's been an excellent mentor into the position, and all the fire chiefs have been fantastic. It's a very unique setup here, and I'm actually quite enjoy working with them. And all the chiefs have been very forward and very polite, and helping work towards a better future here, right? So I'm excited to be here. So thank you for having me. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, good morning and welcome, Chris. We're grateful to have you, and you're joining an incredible fire service with incredible firefighters, and we're very grateful for the service from all of you. So thank you. We will call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is open for public attendance. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings remotely using our current teleconference process. If you have submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic. And at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, that any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This helps with call quality. Please note this meeting is being recorded and may be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. We also ask all attendees to mute their devices to reduce disruptions to the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair, as per the Municipal Government Act, Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. And because we have a hybrid meeting today, we will conduct a roll call. Reeve Link is present. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
I'm here.
Councillor Laprise. I'm here. Councillor Bigger. Present. Councillor Eichert.
Present.
Councillor Kester. Councillor Lowerson. Perhaps if administration could just let us know if Councillor Lowerson is able to join the meeting, or if you see somebody join the meeting. If we do have a councillor who is attending remotely, we will modify our voting procedure and vote by exception. I'll call for any councillor who is opposed to the motion to indicate verbally, and then for any motions with expressed opposition, we'll conduct a roll call vote. Is any councillor opposed to this process? We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
Good morning, Reeve Link, Brian from administration. Administration has 2 items to potentially add to the agenda for council's consideration. The first item is a budget discussion, and that would be follow-up discussion to the committee of the whole. Administration did have some items to bring back to council from council's request from the committee of the whole. So we're hoping to add those under 2.3.1. And administration is also requesting that council add governance review to the in-camera portion of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other changes or additions? A motion to approve the agenda is amended. Also move. Councillor Laprise has moved. Any questions or discussion? We'll just vote by exception in case Councillor Larson joins us. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. With the minutes circulated from the November 1st regular council meeting, any errors or omissions? If not, a motion to approve the
Also move.
minutes as presented. Councillor Eichert has moved. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We also had the minutes from the public hearing for bylaw 2022-11. Any errors or omissions?
I'll move the minutes as presented.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We also had the minutes from the Committee of the Whole from November 15th, 2022.
I'll move them as approved or as presented.
Councillor Kester has moved. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to bylaw 2022-24, land redesignation, 2.11. Good morning.
Good morning, Council. Taylor Felt here with the Planning and Development Services team to present bylaw 2022-24 for Council's consideration of first reading and to request that Council schedule a public hearing for December 20th. This bylaw proposes to redesignate 617 acres within section 1228-24 west of the 4th Meridian from the Agricultural General District to Direct Control District. The site is located immediately south of Kneehill County, southwest of the intersection of Highway 9 and Highway 21, as shown on the location map found on page 23 of your agenda package. The proposal is being made to facilitate the future expansion and development of the Hatarian Brethren Church of Stallville's daughter colony called Sunridge. The applicant explained to me that when a colony reaches a population of 160 members, it's a common development pattern for them to divide and create a daughter colony with 80 members of their mother colony. So Sunridge will be supported by a mix of uses that includes multi-unit dwellings, a school, a church, agricultural operations, abattoirs, farm and accessory structures, market gardens and the potential for a farmer's market, communal childcare facilities, and other supplementary uses that'll provide for the daily needs of their members. The unique mix of residential, institutional, and agricultural uses included in the direct control district are not supported together in the existing general district. And this particular district, DC3, was created to support future development and expansion of 2 other colonies here in our county. Development of the site has been planned in 3 phases, which I have up on the screen here. The first phase includes the development of a layer barn, shops, a truck scale, and water and wastewater infrastructure. The second phase proposes the development of 4 multi-unit dwellings, which are in blue on the screen here. A community building with communal dining facilities, a church, a school, a vegetable storage structure, a butcher shop, and a cemetery. And the third phase sees further agricultural uses developed on the site, and this includes granaries, barns, a feedlot, and a bit of an outlier here, a cement plant. As part of the third and final phase, the existing farmstead and structures, which are located on the northwest corner up here, will be demolished and removed from the site. And the balance of the parcel will continue to remain for crop production. The colony doesn't intend to subdivide the land. However, the Provincial Cemetery Act will require that the cemetery be contained on its own separate parcel. And in phase 2, when the area for the cemetery is finalized, the land will need to be redesignated to the Community Services District, and that's in accordance with the county's land use bylaw. And then subsequently, an application for subdivision will be required. Servicing the site will be provided by means of a water well and a private sewage treatment system. The applicant provided a phase 1 groundwater assessment as well as a level 4 PSTS report. And both documents indicated that the site is suitable for on-site servicing for future residential, community, and cultural uses. The applicant also included a trip generation study with their submission, which noted that traffic volumes are expected to increase marginally as a result of the site development, but that the impacts to the county's transportation network will be insignificant. And the majority of the traffic generated will be by members of the colony and contained almost entirely within the site. So the proposal generally aligns with the best practices of sustainable community development as outlined in our regional growth management plan and the intended development goals of the county. It's the cultural circumstances surrounding the requirement of the uses as they exist in DC District 3, which are intended to ensure that a certain quality of life is maintained and that cultural and social supports are available to these communities within our county. And while some cultivated land will be removed from production as part of the future development of the parcel, the DC district will allow the colony to use the remaining areas for new uses such as rearing fowl, cattle, vegetable gardens, and crop production. And then in accordance with our internal policies and that of the MGA, stakeholders and landowners within a 1 mile radius of the site were notified of the application, and one comment was received, which is included in council's package. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for administration?
I just have a question about the letter that was received and their concern about the water. Did the water study that they do indicate there would be enough water for them and it wouldn't draw down anybody else as well, or?
That's right. Essentially, the summary of the groundwater assessment said that it would have no impacts on adjacent residential development and their wealth.
Any other questions? Council's wishes.
I'll move first reading.
Councillor Kester has moved first reading. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried.
I'll move that a public hearing for bylaw 2022-24 be scheduled for December 20th, 2022 at 9 a.m. in Wheatland County Council Chambers.
Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.31, budget follow-up.
Quick.
Good morning, Council. Brian from Administration here to present the addition, which is the budget follow-up. So Council was electronically circulated with a 6-page document yesterday, just outlining the changes or the highlights from the budget that were requested. Those requests were the 2023 budget inclusions that were 2022 carry forward. So on the first page of the document that you did receive, the total budget carry forwards are highlighted on that page. So the total budget carry forwards in the capital are 3.273 million. And all changes regarding those budget carry forwards have been also highlighted on page 2 of that document. So they vary from project delays to supply chain issues to just general kind of delays that the staff have encountered. Also with this budget as well, we did highlight the rating scale that administration brought forward. So critical, medium, and high, just for council's consideration as well. And those totals were summed up, and all that is summed up on the first page as well. And we also have another category such as a capital repair replacement, a new capital asset, other, or planning or study. in the budget presentation at the committee of the whole, there was also a few projects that were removed from administration at that presentation. So we also did factor those in as well. And I believe that is the changes that council did request, or information that council did request prior to today's meeting. So those have all been summarized. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Questions for administration?
So I'm just looking at so this is a list of all of the high, medium, and critical projects. I was just wondering if you could just provide a grand total.
Yeah, so for the capital, the grand total is, at today's date, 25.2 million. On the first page, what we've done is we summarized it for council. So if you go to just below the table, the summary of 2023 capital budget by priority.
Sorry, I see it.
So the total new projects in 2023 would be the 21.9 million. The carry forwards from 2022 would be the 3.2 million. And then the total budget for capital is the 25.2 million. So of the 2023 projects, 3.2 million are from 2022 that just had supply chain issues, environmental approval delays, supply chain issues, any kind of delay that administration could think of. We just kind of put that in that table for highlight for council. And anything that is labeled critical, high, or medium, we also highlighted that for council, just in case council did want to choose to cut or defer some projects further. What we did is administration went ahead and prioritized those projects. So I'd say typically what administration has aimed for is that $17 to $18 million range of capital projects. So one thing administration also notes is that we do run into issues throughout the year, such as labor shortages, supply chain issues. We're not sure exactly if that problem will be solved in 2023. So that's another factor that we also consider, is that, even if this total amount of projects get approved in the budget, the likelihood of 100% of these projects going forward at 100% of the budget cost is ultimately zero. Administration does wish we had that crystal ball sometimes, but it just doesn't work out. So that's just another kind of factor to consider for council. So ultimately, I'd say ultimately we would like to spend that 17 to $18 million mark. So that's just another factor for council to consider. As well, in the operating budget, there are some one-time items that council should just also, we did present these at the committee of the whole. So the biggest one-time item is going to be that broadband project, and we're very confident that one's going to go forward. So that's just something else that council can consider. And just speaking of the total broad revenue items, so administration did recommend approximately a 4% revenue increase into the budget. So that 4% revenue increase into the operating budget, there are multiple factors at play that council can and should consider throughout that. So that 4% overall budget number that council, administration, has proposed in that budget. So the majority of it at this point is a tax revenue increase. However, that tax revenue increase, we must consider that it won't be a 4% tax revenue increase on every single individual bill. It will come from new assessment. There is a couple bigger projects coming on in the county that might take up about 2% of or 50% of that 4% increase, if that makes sense. And then if council is looking to additionally reduce or potentially defer or delay a potential tax increase on a ratepayer or constituent, there's also the opportunity that council may draw down from reserves at that point. So the revenue increase, the revenue could come from taxation, or the revenue could come from an existing reserve. So I know council, the hardest decision for council ultimately would be that tax, the revenue amount, but administration will not be able to determine the mill rate until, say, March of 2023. And the reason for that is that we'll have to wait for our assessment to come in to fully understand the assessment growth versus the tax rate increase. So ultimately, administration does have to wait until those numbers are finalized, and then we can bring something back for council at that point. But just overall for the budget, it is roughly a 4% tax or 4% revenue increase, which the majority of it does come from taxes. I think that's the answer to Lapreece's question, and also some additional information for council to consider. Thank you.
And just to clarify, when you said like typically in that $17 to $18 million range for capital spend, that would be capital budgeting, anticipating that we would likely spend less than that, or we should be budgeting more than that?
So historically, the county has budgeted around that number, and then we typically do spend less than that, and that's just, again, supply chain issues. I think 2022 was a very irregular year with supply chain issues, same with 2021. So ultimately, and there are some projects that may not just be supply chain issue. It could be labor shortages, or it could just be staff constraints. The staff is very committed to completing projects accurately and just making sure we're getting the best bang for our buck. There was a project in there that, you know, in 2022, a great example would be the Public Works Yard Master Study that we had budgeted $100,000 for, just staff capacity wasn't there to complete it. So we ultimately didn't just go ahead to do it to complete a project. We want to make sure when we're doing these projects that it's the best value for the county. So that one, staff did choose to defer that one, if that kind of makes sense.
Any other questions? And can you just confirm our final assessment, the date that we would know the total assessment, including new, but also any changes to assessment?
The date would be, and Dennis Clem would be the one to, and I think there's a couple day, it could be a couple day window here, but it would be February 28th, 2023. So I think there's a date, potentially a few days before, but that roughly to me is the date that I understand is the date for assessment. And it must be submitted to the province, and that's the deciding factor there.
Any other questions? So in terms of process, if council has any other questions, if we could try and provide them in advance to administration, and then you would be looking for an approval. Or do you want to just walk us through the proposed process?
So administration's proposed process to council would be, and we did outline it at the committee of the whole, but just as a refresher, what administration's hopes are is that council can provide all comments back to administration by December 6th. And any potential comments that council has, we can consider at the December 6th meeting. And ultimately, we are hoping for approval at the December 20th meeting. If administration deems that there's not council total consent, or if we think that there may be some issues that we may run into, administration would propose that the chief elected official call a special council meeting to discuss budget further. That would just be the only item on the budget, and that would be a fair, open process for council to debate that budget further. So if administration deems that there may be a special council meeting required, that's okay. If not, right now it does seem like council is relatively supportive and of the current process that's going forward. If on December 20th we don't reach unanimous consent, or it does get defeated, or if there's additional issues, we can always just call a council meeting later in the week, like the Wednesday or Thursday, and just get it approved at that point. So administration does have some just general ideas on identify potential issues that we could encounter. It doesn't seem like we'll encounter those issues, but if we do, we do have kind of foolproof ways identified to kind of just make sure that budget gets approved prior to December 31st.
So we'll include it on our December 6th agenda if people can review and bring any questions that you have to that meeting. And then on the 20th, we will hope to reach consensus. I don't think we need unanimous support, but hopefully we can find consensus on the budget. And like you said, we can call a special council meeting if necessary, but.
Yes, and again, administration would like to just highlight that one note again, is that We are proposing a 4% revenue increase. The majority of the county revenue does come from taxation. However, there is methods for the county to draw down unrestricted reserves to just ensure like mill rates remain the same or any other factors like that. So it's just something for council to consider. We're also still working on funding aspects for the capital. We would have adequate funds to fund all the capital projects. However, we're in the process of applying for grants for the capital projects, and we don't typically hear about those until, I'd say, January, February of the following year. So in a perfect world, all the grant applications we do put forward get approved, and we get some additional grant funding, so that would just not draw down our existing reserves for that. And that's the nice thing about having the final operating budget approved in April, when council has the information of the assessment and also the information of the 2021 audited financial statement, or sorry, 2022 audited financial statement. I'm a year behind. It's very good information to council to know to act on prior to approving the mill rate and the final operating budget.
Excellent. Is everybody comfortable with that process, and is there any other information that you require prior to considering the budgets on December 6th? If something does come up, please just reach out to CAO Henderson, and he'll provide council any information required. Perhaps just a motion to accept the information presented as information. Also move. Thanks, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks, Brian. We will move to 2.41.
Want me to take this away?
Sure. Thank you.
So when it's really cold and it's snowing real hard, and I'm sitting around not doing anything, I have time to do some thinking. And the problem we're going to run into in the county is we are going to run into a water problem. So at the RMA, I talked to several councillors in Rocky View. Rocky View will look at more water. That's not a problem. We need water. WID needs irrigation. Direct, with the Bruce Lake location is about 15 miles from the city of Calgary. So there's a recreational possibility there. Also a possibility that if we can take some of the burden off the Bow River Basin, that Calgary might buy in on this. And I would assume, because Airdrie's only 20 miles away, that they also might be in the same situation. So what I'm wondering is if we could direct administration to start looking in at, because this could be a municipality operation. I think it was a good idea. I have no idea why it was stopped. There could be very, very good reasons why it was stopped. But I understand it's a massive undertaking. It'll be a big, big project. But if we don't get on it, like if we can find out why it was stopped, maybe we can correct that. Because I do not see any other way to bring enough water into the county without somehow tying into the Red Deer River Basin. It's the only thing that seems to make sense to me. So I just thought I'd bring it up for discussion and to see if we can get administration to maybe start looking at the historical stuff that's there and what we do, what would we going forward, like who do we approach, who all would be in there. So that's where I'm coming from this. So.
Any questions?
Yeah. Where is it fed from?
And mostly, right, it would be water capture storage, as far as I understand, that a lot of you could capture a lot of spring runoff on this. You need the WID buy-in, because I think they would have to run a canal into it to make sure that there's water into it all the time. I think
there's a small one into it now. It's not a high priority for them to fill it up. It's actually been pretty low last year because of the drought. But yeah, it is fed from WID right now and runoff. I think the idea Councillor Eichert was thinking about was the biggest problem that I remember with CMRB was there's a lot of water in the river in the spring runoff, and it flows by. So something like this, would be ideal if you could capture some of that spring runoff, store it for a while. There was quite a substantial study, probably done 20 years ago, I think. Less than that, but there's been some work, so it wouldn't hurt to just look at what's there, review it.
And is it on the county side or?
It's on Rocky View side. So, the south end of the lake would basically touch our border, my division, yeah.
Did I hear it comes from the Red Deer River Basin? Did you say that?
Yeah,
It comes from the both.
The WID water would come from the bowl, but any runoff, I think it might be in the Red Deer River Basin, actually. Should be close.
Runoff comes from there in the, okay.
Yeah, like natural
Now
drainage.
it comes from the both.
Yeah, because it would go down to Serviceberry, and Serviceberry goes to Red Deer. So, yeah, it'd be in the Red Deer Basin.
So what I'm hearing is there's some interest in perhaps having administration bring back like a report on the historical context around it, if that could be provided perhaps to council to read, and then second, to reach out to Rocky View County and WID, perhaps to meet and just discuss if there's mutual interest in at least exploring this or analyzing if there's some potential. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's exactly right. I believe that every meeting we have with WID, they always talk about storage issues. And this is, like, I know this is way too big of a project for one entity, so that, and I know we have to get the provincial government involved in it. Like I said, if we can bring a bunch of people in for different ends of the thing. Like I said, I only know peripheral stuff, like I haven't even seen the deal. And in fact, Strathmore might be interested in it, in the fact that, you know, they're having a water system outside of the bowl once they get to their growth. I have no idea what their growth limit is on what their current water license is on the bow. So, yeah, so it would be all the municipalities. So I think it's worth pursuing. I don't think it'll be a waste of administration's time.
Interesting thing about that, my kids have, there's a party place there. And, there's a plaque there, and it was dammed in the 60s, I think, 65. I'll get a picture of the plaque, but there was federal money put into there to dam that up at one time, or provincial, so.
Councillor Custer?
PFRA?
I think so. I have to look. I think I have a picture on my phone somewhere.
Never heard that before. Yeah, there was extensive study done. If you want information, probably the reservoir would be WID. I would guess, conservative guess, $750 million put it in. It was 200 and some million 10, 15 years ago. So now, with land values tripled and approvals, the only thing that's different is the people making the approvals. If the provincial government puts it in, there's a bigger push for irrigated acres, maybe. The idea of it was the WID would, it's too low of a reservoir now to be much use to WID. They can run water in, but they can't get it out unless they pump it. They'd have to dam it up, move to 564, put a dam in. Then they can fill up, and then they can use 3 or 4 feet of that water. The bottom of it would be for municipal water, and we would never run out because WID can't take it out. Okay, so yeah, it was a good project. We worked awful hard on it. We just couldn't get the money. So I'm guessing well north of $500,000 put it in, but there are other options. There are Langdon Reservoir. We could put a water treatment plant in there. Dam's already in. We were approached, I guess you can ask them about that too, and that's still feasible, but there was an ability to use that water, put a treatment plant down in that neck of the woods. Doesn't matter where, it's always in the corner, right? Langdon's in that corner, Bruce Lakes is in the other corner, Standards in the other corner, Slicker gravel pits, nothing in the middle. But, yeah, it was an extensive study, but if you want more facts, I think WID would be the place to start.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I think it's a good discussion. I fully support the idea of exploring it. I think it's good to be proactive and forward-thinking, knowing what we know about water supply in the Bow River in that basin. So perhaps a motion to direct administration to bring historical information back to council and to correspond with the WID and Rocky Duke County, I heard town of Strathmore potentially, to explore the future possibilities around Bruce Lake. I don't know if you want to expand it to Langdon Reservoir.
Well, I'm just looking at the reason of Bruce Lake, it's that water, that spring capture of the runoff and that kind of stuff. And I think that might be the, I mean, there might be another big option out there. I just want to try to figure out a way to get out of the Bow River Basin, because that is basically closed to us. I'm thinking that we're going to have a horrible time trying to find water license in order to use anything out of the Bow River. So, I mean, and a part of this is also the fact that this country was founded on 3 million acres of irrigated land that they thought they could do back in. I mean, it's a dream. I understand it's a big dream and it's a big money thing, but if it's right, it'll go, and if it isn't right, it will. And it could just, it could just take one letter and everybody goes, no, this will never work. And but yeah, I'll gladly make that motion that we direct administration to find historical documentation on Bruce Lakes and reach out to whoever they believe would be beneficial in the project.
Any questions or discussion? And would you be open to, Councillor Custer had referenced perhaps some potential around Langdon Reservoir. Would you be open to administration looking at that as well?
I'm just sort of looking for something totally different, because like I said, I want to get out of the Bow River Basin, right? Like I don't think that solves our problem long term. So like I'm just looking for something.
Bruce Lakes is Bow River.
It looks like it's half and half.
Well, I'm thinking that anything that
straddles
runs off of it though has to run into service, right? And it has to go the other way.
Well, that was part of the problem, yeah. But to fill it, it's Bow.
Right, but in the spring, if you have the water capture on it, right, like the spring runoff, as I understand it, there's a fair bit of spring runoff there, so. Yeah. Yeah, so.
The motion on the floor, any other questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that forward. We'll move to 2.42.
Good morning, Council. Brian from Administration. On page 43 of your agenda package is the Council Resolution Tracker. This report is presented as always. Anything in green has been deemed complete. Anything in yellow is deemed ongoing. The report itself starts on page 46. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions for CAO Henderson? If not, a motion to accept as information.
Also move.
Thanks, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.43, Strathmore Handy Bus Association update.
Yes, good morning, Council. Brian from Administration again. At the organizational meeting, there was a request from Council to provide an update on the potential board structure and membership for municipal members. Administration did reach out to the president of the Strathmore Handy Bus, and his email is provided under the CAO comments as response. At that time, he also provided some additional documentation for council to consider, which is just the audited financial statements and just some other information that administration thought was relevant for council's information. If there are any questions about this, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions regarding the information provided by the Strathmore Handy Bus Association?
I'll move that council accept the Strathmore Handy Bus Association correspondence regarding board membership and September 2022 financial data as information.
Motion on the floor. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks for bringing that information forward. We appreciate it. And Councillor Priest, I know you've been volunteering with the Handy Bus. If you could, if council's okay with it, if you could just convey council's thanks for providing the information.
Gotcha.
Thank you. We'll move to 2.44, Town of Strathmore IDP and ICF appointment.
Yes, council. So this RFP starts on page 72. The Town of Strathmore appointed 4 members to their IDP and ICF committees. So the county had appointed 3 members. So we have 3 members and 1 alternate. So council should consider to appoint 1 additional councillor to that IDP ICF committee. Just to follow that same process, council should consider opening that a potential nomination for an additional councillor to sit on that committee. And everything else is in the RFP. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
We'll follow the same process as from our organizational meeting. So if anybody wants to nominate or self-nominate, I'll open and call for members of the Strathmore IDP ICF committee.
Just before we go there, I'm just thinking about this, and have we laid out, or is it administration's job to lay out a scope before we get this far into it? I get the feeling, and I've had some conversations with some town Strathmore councillors, and there's, I think there needs to be clarity on what this process is about. Because it seems to me it's like some might feel it's a free-for-all, and it's not.
Yeah, so through the REEV administration,
No, but yeah.
kind of the process that we'll undertake is that we'll establish the committee first, and then at that first meeting, then we'll kind of have a terms of reference and kind of just describe all of the potential services that both county and town provide each other. And then at that point, we'll also have a terms of reference just with meeting times, how the meetings will be conducted, and just refine that scope into the requirements of the IDP and ICF. So that work hasn't been defined, and it will have to go to the committees first, and then as all committee members are present, then that'll be outlined. And administration's job is to just ensure that all the legwork is done going into these meetings. And if there are adjustments to the terms of reference or scope, then it'll be at the discretion of the committee to direct administrations to do that and bring it back for committee consideration. And then ultimately, just for any new councillors' information as well, the purpose of these committees is to do kind of the legwork of that, and then the IDPs and potentially ICFs have to come back to council and get voted on with 3 bylaw readings. So any committee work will be reported back up to council. And the reason for just having the committees is just to kind of do the legwork and then have it come back to council for 3 bylaw readings. Thank you.
We'll follow the same process as the others, and we did establish terms of references with the others, and this is an identified issue across the province, just with the lack of clarity around what can potentially be included in an ICF. Ideally, municipal affairs will be providing some clarity on the scope of ICFs, but the timing of that I'm not sure about. So, but it is a recognized known issue, especially with those that went to arbitration, and there's some challenges around that as well. So it's a good question.
Just with, we did a number of these already with bigger municipalities, and the committee levels was like 1 councillor and an alternate, basically, and administration did the bulk of the work. And it was very well done. And we've got a lot of history. So this one just seems like it's stacking up with a lot of councillors right at the start, when I think admin should do the bulk of the work right at the start. But we will have to negotiate this as we go, and then hearing what we heard at RMA as well with, you know, all the different concerns, I think it's very important that we get the scope laid out before we do any movement forward.
So typically with like, meetings like this, I assume that the first meeting would just more be a commitment from the committee to establish that terms of reference and set the meeting dates and times, and hopefully just, kind of milestones or a timeline to potentially have completion of this document to bring back to both, separate municipalities for or municipal councils for consideration.
Because I've only got experience with dealing with Rocky View. And that was one meeting, right? Administration from both sides did all the legwork. Would that not still sort of be because you guys are gonna know what the scope is. I'm just, like, I just don't wanna be tied up in meeting after meeting after meeting, because I don't think it's necessary. We have to, so like why is this one, it's like, I get the feeling that this one could get complicated, or not complicated, cumbersome. And it is gonna be administration that is gonna have to hammer out most of the details.
We can have that discussion, I think, at the first committee meeting. If there's consensus that, the administration can work, on a substantive amount of the, like, agreement, we can go in that direction. Within the province, the ICFs that appeared to be the most challenging were often with a rural, county or MD, with a sort of moderate or medium-sized, urban municipality within them. That's what can sort of add to the complexity because of potential higher costs of shared services and that type of thing, provision of recreation, which we've already addressed with Strathmore, but it's often things like that that I just hear, like, from colleagues across Alberta. But
So I do think that, I mean, I feel that town of Strathmore doesn't, like, we've had IDPs and ICFs with 5, 6 people. They haven't. So I'm thinking that it's just they don't know what they don't know what they're getting, you know, what it's all about, and
yeah,
some
good
examples given to them that what we've already done with others. Like they're probably just not knowing what's going forward and how to go forward is my thought.
Good discussion.
With that, I'll, ask Councillor Rigger if she wants to be on the.
Would you let your name stand? I'll call a second time for nominations or self-nominations. Call a third time. I will close nominations. Through acclamation, Councillor Bigger is appointed as the additional member to the IDP ICF committee with the town of Strathmore. We will need to appoint a new alternate. Is there anybody who's willing to let their name stand for that?
I would let my name stand as alternate.
Thanks, Councillor Laprise. Would anybody else? I'll call a second time for any nominations or self-nominations for alternate. I'll call a third time. With that, I'll close nominations for alternate. Thanks, Councillor Laprise. We should have a motion appointing the new representative and the alternate.
I'll make the motion that, Councillor Donner Bigger be added to the IDP and
Mike,
sorry, I pressed the wrong. I'll make the motion that, Councillor Bigger be added to another member to the IDP and ICF with town of Strathmore, and that Councillor Laprise be the alternate as well for this board.
Any questions or discussion?
Committee, not board, sorry.
Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.45, unaudited financial statements as of September 30th.
Morning, Council. Joel from Administration here.
Good morning.
The Q3 financial results, the unaudited financial results. So I'll just briefly talk through, it's very consistent with Q2. Our main, at least on the operations side, our main variances remain the Muirfield sales and what we see in the revenue side for user fees and sales and goods. That's where that shows up. I will bring up the operation statement here as well, just so we can walk through it. So the Muirfield sales, they show up on that user fee and sale of goods line. Under note 2, the expenditures related to the costing of the inventory, which would be the lot lands, those show up under the note number 4 there, 4.7 million subdivision land and development. Just as to reiterate, as I believe I did in Q2, that the cost of the lots, they were contributed assets, so those weren't necessarily cash expenses for the Muirfield lots that were sold. And then the other large variance would be that last school district payment. That would be about $2.5 million, and that shows up in the net property tax, the first revenue line. So once that's put in, that variance will effectively be wiped out. So just much like the same quarters, those are the main large variances that we see. The statement of financial position for Q3, in terms of net financial assets, they're effectively unchanged from 72.9 million to 73.1 million. And in addition to with Q3, we've included the Q3 spending for capital, just as I think was done in prior a couple of years ago. We're trying to bring that back for council's interest, and so there we have a table with all the project information, including the status as of September 30th, which would be construction status, if it's completed, if it's deferred, those kind of things, an approximate percentage that was provided by project managers, and any comments that are relevant for those individual projects. And then, of course, there's the budget and the actual costs included as well. And yeah, that concludes the Q3 results. I'm available for questions.
Any questions for administration regarding the financials?
Maybe a clarification on Ag Service General here. One line item says sidearm.
That might.
Is that like a Colt or a?
I think it's that mower.
Yeah.
I think it's a mower, isn't it?
Just killing weeds. Just weeds.
Yeah, that one would be a mower, I think. Just for clarification.
Good clarification.
And administration has kind of reviewed this through various departments, and we're actually very pleased with how everything is. Just done a broad scale, kind of a big picture thing, is that for us to remain relatively unchanged through this last year, which is a year of extreme fuel prices, extreme prices, shortages, which obviously kind of assist in this, where when you actually can't get things, and that's not our intention. Our intention is to keep that level of service that council has committed to maintaining for residents, and I know council feels very strongly about that. So to kind of remain in this position, obviously there's some potential outstanding items like accruals, and there are some payments to go forward. And a lot of this will shake it at the audited financial statement. But just given those kind of circumstances, administration is very pleased with where we sit, and there are no issues that we have identified at all. So just for council's consideration as well. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Just speaking for myself, it was presented in such a clear way, and the notes were very self-explanatory. It was easy to understand, and definitely looking at the net financial assets year over year. Definitely a huge thank you to CAO Henderson and to our administrative team, and to every person on our team. I think, especially based on CAO Henderson's comments with some of the challenges throughout the year to maintain this financial position, definitely shows commitment to fiscal constraint, but while also maintaining that service level. And that's not an easy balance, but I feel like we have sort of found that balance. There's always tweaks and always, you know, issues that we need to address in certain areas, but I'm very grateful that we've been able to find this balance and to continue to be able to address service level issues, but while still doing this and with maintaining that mill rate. I am incredibly, incredibly grateful. And it was just a very comprehensive way to review the financials and to see where our position is, so thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Motion to accept this information.
So moved.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Thank you. Motion is carried. We will move to 2.46, Rural Renewal Program.
Good morning, Council. Matt, on behalf of administration, on page 86 of the agenda package, you'll find the request for decision for the Rural Renewal Program. This is in response to a directive on October 18th, 2022. If Council recalls, we did submit to you a comprehensive report on the rural renewal stream. What you have in front of you today are two additional resolutions for Council's consideration. Obviously, the first being receiving this report as information. There are alternatives, of course, as well. The first alternative resolution submitted to Council for its consideration is if Council wishes to continue intermunicipal conversations. Just by way of background, staff have conducted some conversations with the town of Strathmore and some sidebar conversations with Community Futures. That resolution will direct administration to continue those conversations for collaborative opportunities for this program. Secondly, the alternative resolution is Council wishes to proceed with the application process, and within the reports that have been presented to Council, you are privy to that application process. You can, of course, direct administration to begin that process as well. The supplemental information is included in the agenda package for your consideration and information as well. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Any questions or discussion?
I would like to see this go forward. I think as a region, we are, if we're not at a breaking point, we are going to be pretty soon, I think, with what we're bringing into the county. I know this may be a lot of, like, I didn't understand how much staff time this is going to take, and but I'm thinking if we fill out the application form and see how far we go, we can always stop, right? And if it's getting to be too much time, too much money, I think we should try just for the whole region. I think it does help. There is a program now that they're actually showing. I just sent it to a few people that are looking for. There's a webinar on how companies can apply for this stream or for any foreign worker programs. So I'm going to take that course and see if it helps, if it's helping them. But I think if we're designated, it's just going to help them more.
Madam Reeve, just to supplement to Council, you'll note under the Chief Administrative Officer comments as well, administration has evaluated some resources internally, and we'll do our utmost as usual with programs to, spread that workload across to other employees within the county to ensure that we can get that application done. And to Councillor Bigger's point, through that application process, that's the first step. The next step was obviously administering the process. So ultimately, we will continue, if this is Council's wish, to endeavor to look for those collaborative opportunities as well across the region.
So with this program, we need to collaborate with a settlement providing organization. Are we thinking this would be WFCSS, or who are we collaborating with to make sure these newcomers have housing and all the supports they might need?
So I sent an email last night showing newcomer support, I believe, which would meet that criteria. It's Foothills Community Immigration Services, and they specifically referenced Strathmore, and my understanding is that that's Strathmore area. It's at the bottom of that very long email.
I didn't see it.
I sent it. I didn't send it till 8 o'clock last night. But they do provide settlement services, including workshops and group sessions, school support. As well, it does note in the report from administration, under the rural renewal stream requirements, that it's on page 93, the 5th bullet point from the top. It does say an endorsement letter from a settlement providing organization. And then in brackets, it says does not need to be local, that collaborates with the community. And so when I went on the provincial website and was exploring settlement services that are already in existence, there are many, I would say, within sort of a 1 hour to 1.5 hour sort of radius, like around Wheatland County, even closer. But definitely if you do that sort of 1 hour, there's several newcomer support services that are listed under settlement organizations that perhaps we could reach out to. Some of them were very specifically focused on rural. Even in the city of Calgary, they had rural and agricultural worker support programs. We did identify before, Strathmore Library does provide some ESL programming. CAO Henderson also found some programming through Bow Valley College. Bow Valley College was also awarded multiple grant programs throughout the last few years to develop different supports. They don't have a campus in Strathmore now, but they do still provide virtual education opportunities for folks in our area. And then longer term, we've missed the intake the intake for settlement integration language project grants, but they have grants for building community capacity and supporting labor market integration. One of those for sure indicated they were open. The building community capacity one is open to municipalities, including MDs, so rural. And then some of them look like for partnerships in that application. I support Councillor Bigger's comments. I think building off of what Councillor Eichert said about constraints for growth and job creation in our area, water is definitely going to be a critical factor, but labor is going to be another critical factor. And I think some of the exciting development that we're seeing is going to help with that, because you're going to attract, people are going to move here, and we're going to retain youth better in Alberta, especially with some of the diversification. But I think we're going to need more than that. And I'm hearing loud and clear that particularly our ag sector has concerns about retention, given that there might be new opportunities for some of their current employees, and just concerns about maintaining operations. And this has been a very direct and clear request from some of those agricultural producers. And so I think we do need to respect their concerns. And because this is a program that only municipalities can apply for, I do support exploring it further. The only other thing that I would note is also on page 93 under the community designation. The deadline is February 16th, but Lisa Houle, and I'll get her title wrong, Matt knows. Lisa, who's like our labor and immigration, like regional economic development support liaison from the province, has indicated that they have significant interest, and there is that note that it will be open until the province designates a sufficient number of communities to proceed. And so it likely could close prior to that February 16th deadline, is what was indicated to me informally. I think those were my only notes. Any other questions or discussion?
I'm just curious too about the housing. How do we propose to find suitable housing for newcomers? I mean, I just see that, I just don't know. I've thought about it a lot, and we have lots for sale in Gleason, but no houses. So how is a newcomer gonna navigate all of that? And I totally support this idea. I really do. I'm not trying to say that I don't. I just want to understand how we can make it work properly.
Totally.
Make sure that when people come, they have somewhere to live. And I don't know, like I think I read in the report, some communities have actually kind of become developers and set up housing. And I don't know if we want to do that, but, you know, I do think that we need something to offer somebody. So I don't know.
Yeah, so recently we have had, and I've heard different individual councillors have potential developers, not the county, looking at potential interest in diverse housing offerings, even in some of our hamlets. I suspect it would be part of the conversation with Strathmore as well, because Strathmore also has affordable housing. And then I know this one particular meeting that we had, that Councillor Bigger and I had with one of our agricultural operations, I believe they said they have on-site housing. And then I know I've spoken with other larger agricultural operations that also provide on-site housing for their employees. So that helps address that sort of affordability issue. The other initiative, and it was like an amendment to the land use bylaw, but allowing like older mobile homes, that also can address, because I have also talked to agricultural producers who have taken advantage of that or are considering taking advantage of that, to provide more affordable housing on site as well. So I think personally, I do not have an interest in Wheatland County developing, but if we can foster that for developers, and maybe there's ways to explore. I actually had a couple of people just ask, and you might have been there actually, about an opportunity in Gleason. And I just asked them to reach out to our administration because I think there are some opportunities there. And I think we'll see some of that diversity in housing come as well in this area as development increases.
I'm encouraged to hear that there's some developers actually discussing and talking about it.
Yeah.
'Cause like you, I don't really think that Wheatland County is in the business of developing neighborhoods.
No, and I don't think we need to. I mean, you pointed to, we have very, very reasonable lots and even some homes that are available. But I do think private sector can do that. There was one other thing. I do think there's a potential opportunity that we could explore as well for a P3 type concept with this, where rather than completely relying on our own internal capacity, if we wanted to look at perhaps some private participation in that review committee with some of the significant potential development that's coming, provided that's permitted within the process, I think they would be best suited to be identifying appropriate candidates. Recognizing it may need some administrative support, but if this is a limiting factor to further potential development, then that would be like an opportunity cost if we're not, there may be some nominal investment in administrative capacity that would have a high ROI in terms of potential development. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Thinking about how this all started, and the request came from a CFO basically to look for possible filling labor spots that are vacant. They do have housing on site. Most of the CFOs do. That's where the request came from. For me, I like when government doesn't get involved in things like this. I think it's better when industry does it. And Councillor Bigger mentioned there's some new processes probably coming in to help them better do this job themselves. And then I heard administration say there was going to possibly be a lot of staff time involved. So I don't think we're here yet. Sorry, I don't. I think we're too early. And I have, if there needs to be low-income housing put out there, let a developer do that. if the market's there, they'll do it. We just had another hamlet that's not a hamlet going for first reading. And I look at that and, you know, we have we have a huge agricultural religion, I'll say, that is growing in our county all the time and developing mini hamlets. So I don't know. I just don't think we're there yet. Sorry.
So by becoming a designation, we have to do some legwork to get the appropriate place so that when they come here, they have things set up. But we don't do the work to get them here. That's not our job. That's their job. And they're making that simpler too, or trying to make that straight. But all we are doing is trying to become a designated area, saying that we've done some legwork, we have these things set up. That's all. I'm hoping that's all. Like, let's get the application, let's find out. I'm willing to try, and if it gets too cumbersome or expensive, I guess we either talk to the province again and say this isn't right, or we just don't, we quit. But I'm sure willing to try.
I agree with Scott. I look at all the farming operations, CFOs that have places for workers. They've come to a meeting when they wanted extra, and then it was granted to them. They want a fourplex, or they want an extra subdivision. Our land use bylaw now, we put 5 subdivisions on a quarter. I don't see that as a problem, providing housing for the agricultural sector. Really, I'm opposed to applying because we really don't have that capacity. But I don't mind continuing the conversation, say with Strathmore, and work as a partnership, because a lot of them maybe would live in Strathmore. Say the new de Havilland thing, do they want to live on a confined feeding operation? Probably not. They probably want to move into, say, Strathmore. So I don't mind continuing the conversation, but I'm not in favor of an application. No, we're not there yet.
The problem is, if you're not designated, all the applications that come in to bring in labor are federal. So the federal government doesn't recognize, even if we had housing, if we had everything here, they wouldn't even recognize that we do. So applications that are going in federally, they don't recognize that we're a designation, so they don't bring those people in to this area. They'll go to where the designations are, Brooks, Dutchess. So it's like a provincial government not letting the federal government know where the problems are. So by becoming a designation, you'll get more access to labor just by becoming a designation, because you're letting the federal government know that. It's complicated.
So following up on what Councillor Kester said, if the town of Strathmore were to do this, because this is, the problem's going to be the housing, because there's no quick, affordable way to do this without, like, it would make sense that we have hamlets. Gleason is a perfect example of that. But I somehow figure that we have to it's that cart before the horse thing, that we have to have the industry in the area that's going to attract the workers. Now, I'd 100% jump on if Strathmore is going to be the designation and we're going to be the people behind, like we're going to be affiliated with it. I am good with that. I just don't see how you can do affordable housing in the area. I just don't see how that's, well, I see how it's done, but I'm not sure that the people are gonna, we'd have to change our whole mindset. Like affordable housing, I'll give you an example. So the affordable housing in the city of Calgary, they took one of the high-rise, the old dome building, and they put 92 quote-unquote affordable housing units in there. And the affordable housing units were $220,000 a piece. That's what Calgary calls affordable housing. But they had a grant from the federal government for another $265 or $265,000 each. Those units were just about $500,000 a piece. We cannot get caught up in that. We cannot get caught up in, you know, the federal government's going to give you X amount of money and we're going to, because buildings cost, to build a house, to put somebody into, to our standards, is about $330 a square foot running right now. It's so, you know, like a 1,000 square foot house is $330,000. Like, I don't care how much the government kicks in.
Mm-hmm. So you don't have to have, it'll be up to the application, which I don't know what the application looks like, but so if, let's say I have housing, but the federal government doesn't approve these labor market assessments or these foreign workers to come in because we're not a designated area. But those, when you do an application, you have to have already a house so this would be a slow process because if they're applying to the federal government and they already have a house, they're okay. But it's, to me, it's going to be like, so we become a designated, then people that are going to be putting in, maybe feel about they put affordable housing in our area, they already know that we're designated. So those builders would be even more apt to, or developers would be more apt to bring in. I don't think we're doing this the wrong way. I think this is the right way to bring in affordable housing. I think the opposite is you.
We're in the county. Where would you be able to bring in quote unquote affordable housing? As far as I can figure out, it would be in Gleason, Rocky Ford Standard, Rosebud, and Carsland, right?
Yeah.
But
or even Strathmore. I don't know.
Well, I know, but then do we not get Strathmore? Just seems to be they should be the lead on this. They should actually be the lead on this.
But if you say Strathmore is a designated area, then Wheatland County gets left out. Then Rocky Ford, Bizarre, Standard, Carsland, they all get left out.
Well, they have, so two clarifications. Nowhere in any of the material that I read does it specify you have to have affordable housing, certainly not municipal affordable housing. There is a point in the report, I'll go back to it, but I don't want to lose this page, that specifies communities have the ability to determine what settlement services they will provide. So that could be pointing to Foothills, whatever the name of that support that I emailed was, and indicating we could also explore if there are others in the region that are closer, or perhaps there's a community organization that wants to set up an office in Strathmore. Given the potential growth in the future, it may make sense for another organization to do that. That in a lot of the communities is not driven by the municipality. It's driven by either like a faith-based organization, it's by civil society, right? Or a nonprofit organization. I'm not suggesting we apply, or I'm not supportive of us applying in isolation. My hope would be that we would do a joint application with the town of Strathmore, with the town likely leading, under designated communities on the GOA website. There's multiple cities or towns that include rural municipalities or smaller municipalities with them. So the MD of Smoky River has 2 towns and 2 villages under them. The town of Taber has the MD of Taber and the town of Vauxhall included within them. The RM of Wood Buffalo did apply independently. The County of Grand Prairie applied, but also included the towns of Sexsmith and Wembley. And then Brooks has Bazzano included, the villages Dutchess, and then Rosemary, and also the County of Newell. So it's sort of that regional approach. So it is certainly something that we could invite the villages to consider as well. Many of these applications have towns, counties, and villages combined. I do agree that it would make sense for the town to potentially lead it, and it sounds like they're interested. They're also hearing from their business community a request for this. My request, and I can do a motion, would be for council to consider joint application with the town, or to ask to be included in their application, and then to continue those conversations with civil society or nonprofits in our communities already that might be looking, or that might already be providing support, settlement supports, or that may be interested in setting up a program, including, you know, places like the library, that Foothills organization, see what Bow Valley offers virtually, those types of things. The point about determining supports is on page 94, fifth bullet. It's the responsibility of the community to identify what kind of settlement supports they will offer in collaboration with the settlement providing organization to help the candidate and their families settle into the community. So that, at least in this, and from what I read, that's not necessarily prescriptive, and we already do have that coverage with Foothills. And then it might also be prudent, and I would be willing, like with council direction, to give more, if we do move on this, we could also, I like Councillor Bigger's idea, share that more broadly with potential developers, because there could be synergies from the developers knowing, probably if we do receive designation, that could foster the use of potential development in wherever that private sector wants to look at. And then there could be that potential as well, whether it's the town of Strathmore applying, or if there are nonprofits or NGOs or whatever, that perhaps we could provide a letter of support for some of those provincial grant opportunities around building community capacity and labor market integration. So administration did have motions to accept the report. There's also a potential motion we could consider to continue the intermunicipal. You know what, I don't do this very often. I'm going to make a stab at a motion. I'll move that council accept the Rural Renewal Program report dated November 22nd, 2022 as information, and further, that council continue intermunicipal cooperation opportunities regarding the program, with further conversations with the town of Strathmore, and direct administration to continue intermunicipal conversations on the Rural Renewal Stream program with the town of Strathmore, Community Futures Wild Rose, and any other nonprofit or private organizations. And I'm just going to amend the recommended motion and direct administration to explore the application process with the town of Strathmore as soon as possible. I'll open the floor to questions or discussion. And I know we definitely don't have consensus, and I really appreciate the diverse perspectives. I think they're important. Councillor Kester.
Would you consider adding the villages in too?
Yes, sorry, I actually meant to. Thank you. Yes. The town of Strathmore and the 3 villages within Wheatland County. And if any councillors have contacts, whether they're NGOs or civil society or private developers that you think may have an interest in either providing programming or developing diverse housing options, if you could connect them with our administration to have that conversation. Councillor Eckert.
So do we have any, like, how fast you're gonna have well, how long would it take you to realize that, wow, this is gonna be massive? Like, is there some sort of a guide that administration can go by so that you can come back to us and say, yeah, no, this is going to be, we'll need to bring somebody else on to do this and all that kind of stuff, the sooner the better, then we can sort of say, okay, we're gonna tamp this down or whatever.
So a couple things through the REEV. to council with respect to timing and workload and all of that. Should the motion direct us to kind of assemble all that information to Reeve-Link's motion, generate kind of that dialogue amongst the municipalities, community associations, et cetera, and see who's on board, I think it would be prudent to report back to council on those conversations. So if Reeve-Link would consider that as well. And obviously that timeline, the reason why administration included reporting back Q4 2022 is because there should be some time to consider within January, the first month of 2023, to assemble that application and apply. Administration thinks that it would be difficult to discern the workload required to administer the program. Obviously, we've included some of those, some of that information in the supplemental report with respect to other municipalities. However, part of the challenge with discerning that is each region is different. There are different partners associated and assembled with respect to our municipal neighbors with whom we've contacted, and with respect to obviously what the Wheatland town villages application would look like and who would be involved in that in terms of administering it. So that would be difficult to kind of quantify in a sense with respect to staff time to administer the program. Now, on the back end with respect to the application process, which I was hinting at, I mean, we could certainly get to that and get that application in before the deadline in February of 2023. So that's not an issue. I think with respect to reaching out and talking to the villages and engaging with the town from an administrative level, we do that anyways, so that wouldn't be a challenge at all to get that conversation going on the administrative end. And with respect to having those conversations with private industry, some of the businesses, the nonprofits, we do that anyways as well. And we're more than aware, obviously, councillors sit on boards and the rest, so that shouldn't be an issue either. So right now, the application process and getting that information together shouldn't be a challenge on administration's behalf. In terms of administering the program, moving forward in 2023, should we be successful in our application and all that, I think that time will tell on the workload. Now, again, I will just reiterate, obviously, should we be successful in that application, it is administration's obviously priority with this program that we will evaluate our internal resources, to the CAO's comments in the report here, evaluate our resources, see where we can spread that workload, and then see, what we're dealing with on that end as well. But should we be successful with our regional neighbors and getting that collaborative effort done, I would venture, I would suppose that it would be kind of nominal on our end if we have multiple partners involved.
Any other questions or discussion? That's helpful, thank you.
I still go back to the original intent of this was from a agricultural producer that was trying to get help. They have housing, they have all the things, and if they're having trouble with it now, I do not see this helping that. I see it's opening up a can of worms that once it's opened, you cannot put it back in, so I will not be supporting it.
That was one person that came and talked to us, and other, like I work for a company that's having trouble getting workers, so.
Yeah, and
it's there.
Some of our committed large potential developments have also expressed concerns around labor market and expressed preliminary support for applying for this designation. And it's definitely an issue that arises when I'm having discussions with other potential investors to the county. But again, I'll reiterate, I think the diverse perspectives are really important, and yeah, it's definitely a complex challenge. I think it's also important to recognize that this is one of the provincial and federal approaches to addressing labor market challenges. They're also very focused on skill development, youth development, support for trades development at our technical colleges and schools in the province. attraction of labor force from within Canada as well. We saw the provincial campaign, Alberta's Calling, trying to attract workers from areas of Canada that may have higher costs of living to attract some of those skilled workers as well. So while this is the only opportunity at this point that has a municipal potential component, both our provincial and federal government do have multiple other streams and programs that they are funding and providing and focused on to address labor market. Community Futures Wild Rose has done significant work on labor market analysis and strategy specific to the ag sector, but also more broadly. So while we're looking at this in isolation, it's not certainly happening in isolation. So I think it's important to recognize that as well. Any other questions or discussion? I'll do a roll call vote.
We have the motion read out because it was fairly
Yeah,
lengthy.
sorry, Shanna.
Okay, I
Good
have,
idea.
that council accept the Rural Renewal Program report dated November 22nd, 2022 as information, and further that council direct administration to continue intermunicipal conversations on the Rural Renewal Stream Program with the town of Strathmore and Community Futures Wild Rose, and any other nonprofit or private organizations, and direct administration to explore the application process of the town of Strathmore and the 3 villages within Wheeling County.
Yeah, and if we can just add the 3 villages to that first, to the town of Strathmore and the 3 villages. That motion clear? Do we need any amendments? And I think if we could also just include, I'll propose an amendment for administration to regularly report back on progress to council. And I think, did you say just as soon as possible for the application process?
It's just to explore the application.
Okay. If we can just add as soon as possible, and the only reason I say that is just the clause that the program could close prior to the application deadline if there's sufficient number of communities designated. Any questions or discussion? And thank you. That was good to have clarification.
Let's just talk now.
Yeah, so I think my understanding would be if we were to enter into an application process, administration would bring that back and say the town is prepared to do an application. Here's what that would look like, and that would get council approval prior to being applied for. We'll do a roll call vote. Reeve Link is in favor. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Opposed.
Councillor Laprise.
I'm in favor. I like the collaboration, and I do see future labor shortages being an issue. I'm in favor.
Councillor Bigger.
In favor?
Councillor Eichert.
In favor.
Councillor Kester.
Favor.
Councillor Laverson.
In favor.
Motion is carried. Good discussion, everybody. We'll move to 2.47, request for letter for support.
Good morning, Council. Matt from Administration. Before you in your agenda package on page 98 is the TIU Canada request for letter of support. This is specific to the Gleason Solar Project that has AUC approval and its development permit issued. The details of the TIU letter are in your agenda package. Yesterday, you were circulated a revised letter for your consideration. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Council's wishes.
So I support this, but I just wondered, actually, it's funny, I didn't realize this was a Siksika Nation owned project. But I was just thinking that perhaps the letter should CC Chief O'Ray, just so they're aware that we are continuing our support of the project. And but
yeah, that's a good point. If we could include Chief Crowfoot and Siksika Nation Council.
Yeah. So with that amendment, I would move that council provide a letter of support to TIU Canada for their request for project funding from the Canadian federal government under the Smart Start Renewables Energy Program.
Just a small spelling on Boscario on the letter that was circulated. It might have already been fixed. Unless you changed your last name. I can only imagine what you get for recommended. Any questions or discussion on the motion?
Just, I understand, I understand the deal here, but it sort of seems to be that we're picking winners and losers here. Like, we're gonna, and if we do this, then everybody's gonna sort of like, and I don't think it's our job to pick winners and losers. This thing has to stand on its own merit. I mean, they've got application, you know, for it. I just feel uncomfortable supporting them. Somebody can explain or give me the argument that this isn't saying that we're giving our go-ahead on something, and if it goes sideways down the road, then we've attached our name to it. So I think this is, sort of picking winners and losers, and I do not think that's a government's job.
Yeah, we did have a similar question when we did letters of support for, I believe it was the Universal Broadband Fund, because we had private entities approach requesting letters of support for that, and how we addressed, because that was a concern, and like, I agree with the concern. What we did was we did letters of support for each entity that requested one that was applying that was within Wheatland County. So I think we ended up doing 3 or 4 letters of support to that UBF fund. To my knowledge, this, and administration can confirm, but if other entities seek letters of support for any grant program, it would come forward to council. So if there was Wheatland County specific projects that are seeking letter of support for this grant application, this is often a box you have to check in, you know, your grant application through that process. Council would certainly be considering each request for that letter of support. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
It's my understanding that this is within our county boundaries, correct? So, I don't think we've ever offered a letter of support for things like this before, not like particular renewables. And I just think to when we had opposition in this room from our residents, and I don't even know how far along this project is. Has it gone through EUC final approval? Is it done? And my next question is, what does this letter actually, does it mean anything? Because ultimately, we don't have a say in these as far as I understand. It's out of our hands, so I don't see if it even matters, to be honest. And that's the frustration we faced as council, and I've heard the same thing at RMA, is the frustration of these projects. We don't necessarily disagree with them, and I'm not saying we do. It's out of our hands, so if you want our support, give us some powers to effective change or make some of these changes or be able to help our residents, but I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place here.
So I wasn't here for the redesignation of the land, so I don't know what that process looked like and who was here in opposition to it, but I was here for the development permit, and there was, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there was any opposition. And I think I read in that package that the landowner had actually received approval from all of surrounding neighbors on it. So for me, I don't think it's contentious that way, that I think the neighbors agree that this is a project that's going ahead. I think it shows support to our neighbors in Siksika. And I think it's maybe just like Reeve Link said, a checkbox on a grant application. It's not showing that we're one way or another on the idea of renewables. It's just it's a project that's going ahead in our county, and so we might as well help it out. Those are my thoughts.
And I'm not talking specifically this project. I'm just talking overall the projects that we've seen here. We've had some that have had opposition, and we were powerless to do any effect change. And some of that was by our own making. I understand that, but take it out of our hands completely. Like, I just, that's the thing.
Yeah, and I think that's a separate matter, and I agree, we heard that echoed throughout, colleagues all across Alberta, at the RMA convention. Totally separate issue, though. This is AUC approved. It's approved by the county at this point. I have the same recollection that Councillor Laprise does, that this specific, anytime these letters of application come forward, we can consider the specific context around them. So there may be an argument made in the future where if there was a highly contentious project that did not have Wheatland County residents or ratepayers support, then we could take that into consideration in that letter. This specific project, and from talking to some folks who were engaged on this and will be potentially impacted by it, there was a high degree of support for this project. There hasn't always been with projects, we know that, but that's why I do support this specific project. And just, it's not even actually supporting the project, it's supporting the application for the specific grant, which sounds like it will add value to the project for the developers. So I'll move that council provide a letter of support to TIU Canada for their request for project funding from the Canadian federal government under the Smart Start Renewables Energy Program.
Excuse me, Reeve.
Oh, did you already move? Oh, thank you.
With the amendment.
My apologies.
Remember?
Yes, I do now. Thank you. I'll withdraw my motion, seeing how it's completely irrelevant. Any further discussion or questions? Councillor Kester.
There was a comment made earlier that we pick and choose in the county. I don't want that perception out there that we pick and choose. So in the past, anybody that I can't ever remember denying anybody a letter of recommendation or a letter of support. People ask, we usually grant it. I would support this, that we would grant it. I don't want it to be perceived that we are picking and refusing some and approving others. We only get a handful a year anyway for support.
Any other questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed?
I am.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Reeve Links in favor. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
In favor.
Councillor Laprise.
In favor.
Councillor Bigger.
In favor.
Councillor Eichert.
Opposed?
Councillor Kester.
In favor.
Councillor Larison.
In favor.
Also, good morning, Councillor Larison. I'm sorry. I'm glad you could join us. Motion is carried. Yes, for sure. Let's take a 5-minute.
Good morning, Council. Brad Bullock presenting. Fortis Alberta would like to upgrade a portion of the existing power line in the hamlet of Rosebud, as shown in the included map, to a three-phase 25 kilovolt overhead line to provide more reliable service to the town. The proposed alignment crosses along the north boundary of roll 377-9000, owned by the county, and will connect to the existing line on Glide Street. Fortis Alberta has requested a 6-meter wide easement to replace a guy wire anchor and overhead power line within the portion of 3rd Avenue, Plan 3767CN, that lies within the plan located in Southwest 182721 west of 4 for this purpose. The proposal has been reviewed by administration and no conflicts or concerns have been identified. And just up on the screen, I will put the images of where they're requesting it. And that's the report. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions for administration? Council's wishes.
Just a couple. That's not going to interfere with the baseball diamond, is it? I don't think so.
No, through the chair, there should be no interference with the baseball diamond
Okay.
or any other infrastructure that's planned.
I've got a concern from some of the residents. I talked to Brian about them couple power poles. Do you think they can remove them when they're over there working on this other project, or have you found out anything about them?
Through the chair, we are in communications with Fortis about those power poles on the other side. We're expecting a response in the next 10 business days. But they are aware of it, and we're reviewing that situation separately.
Okay, as long as they take them out. Okay. With that information, I'll move that we, I don't have a motion in front of me now. Give me a sec. I move that council authorize administration to sign a utility right-of-way agreement with Fortis Alberta to place a guy wire anchor and overhead power line that within the portion of 3rd Avenue. Based on the information provided in this RFD.
So Councillor Kester, you're moving the recommendation.
Yes.
Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.49, lease agreement with TELUS. Story of all our lives.
Bryce Mackin, Manager of Technical Services, presenting the lease agreement with TELUS. There is an existing lease with TELUS for an existing telecommunications tower located on the Wheatland West Fire Hall. This lease was originally signed between TELUS and the Fire Association and assigned to Wheatland County in 2016 when the Fire Association was dissolved. The current lease expires January 31st, 2025. And as part of TELUS's due diligence to ensure they do not need to find a new site upon the expiry of the current agreement, TELUS is asking for a new lease now to commence in 2025 with an initial 5-year term and 3 further automatic 5-year renewal options. These conditions and proposed terms are the same as the current lease agreement. TELUS has proposed the rent for the period February 1st, 2025 to January 31st, 2030 be set at $9,270.85 per year, which represents a 10% increase from the current rate. Rental rates for renewal terms beyond that will be adjusted in accordance with the Consumer Price Index as agreed in the current lease agreement. Upon council approval, administration will ask TELUS to include the county as an additional named insured as permitted under Clause 9 of the agreement. Locating a tower in a strategic location permits a wide variety of cellular and other radio services to be available for local ratepayers, and we will be receiving annual lease payments and revenues as proposed in the agreement. And that is my presentation. Here for any questions.
So it's going to be a bizarre question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Because my residents in Muirfield, we've had numerous meetings with TELUS, and they just think that we should pay for it to solve their problem. Let's not renew this and make them move it. And further to this, should we be asking the town, because at some point this is going to be absorbed by the town if they want it there in the future. We're asking for a 15-year commitment here, so, and we're looking at possible relocation of that fire hall at some point.
Yeah, I did have that. I don't want to cut off your first question, but my question was just if there was a change to fire hall location. I saw on page 144.15 successors and assigns. Does that constrain like options on that site, and is that a reasonable provision? Like I think we're bound to the landlord shall cause every assignee or successor of the landlord to agree in writing to be bound by all obligations of the landholder hereunder. Does that constrain the site just if there is a different potential future use. And like publicly recognizing we've had no conversations, like specifically around this, just it has been raised that fire service on the west side needs to be looked at. And I just don't want us to extend an agreement that could potentially limit possibilities for that site. Your other question, I will open that to council. I have not established even a thought on that yet, but my first thought is concern around if it would further detrimentally affect service, which is already horrendous right now for myself and multiple ratepayers I've talked to in the area. And we have outstanding challenges for sure in Lakes of Muirfield, but that's expanding around the county, I would say. So
The reason I brought it forward is I just had another email the other day about it from a resident, and, you know, I explained that I don't think it's appropriate for the county to be spending taxpayer money to solve a private company's problem, but people are getting to the point where they're thinking we should be doing that. And that's something that I think is, when you look at the lease payments here that we're getting, yeah, it's a revenue, but also if we're gonna have to turn around and pay for that to provide service in the future, where's the balance? You know, we can provide land, which we've offered them in that site, and an expedient permit process and all kinds of stuff, trying to make it acceptable for them to go and help us provide service that they should be providing. There was no bites on it, so this obviously supports probably the vast majority of that tower supports the town of Strathmore, I would guess, just by location. So that's all. I don't expect any action, just comment.
I would really like administration to look into, does this hamstring that property? Because that property, if we sell the building, or if we sell that piece of property, we move a fire hall, because that would be a developable, whatever, piece of property that you could put houses into, and if you can't do that, then all of a sudden it becomes 15 years down the road, we're hanging on to it because we can't get fair market value for it or whatever. So I would like to direct administration to, I don't know, probably we're gonna have to talk to legal to find out if there's some way that we can make this agreement so that when we sell the property, we're not infringing, like, when we sell the property, then that tower is no longer controllable, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And just to note that there is no plan to do anything with that building at this point. Council did approve the study for potential placement or existing building of the Wheatland West Fire Hall. And the nice thing about this RFP is that there is a significant amount of time that administration can look into it. We don't anticipate to take the 2 years to look into it, but the lease does expire at the end of 2024, as noted in the RFP. So there's lots of time, and these are great comments, and administration will take these back and bring back to council at a future date for consideration.
I was just wondering, you made a motion, Councilor Eichert, would you consider a friendly amendment to add, communicate with the town of Strathmore as well? There has been indication from the town that I've heard through some of their councilors that we don't give them notice on what we do against their borders. And we could just share this information with them that we're looking at this lease and if they have any concerns.
we just have the motion read back as well, just for clarity.
That council direct administration to talk to legal to find out if we can make the agreement so that when we sell the property that the tower is no longer controllable, and to communicate with the town of Strathmore.
I would accept that friendly amendment.
So for clarity, would you consider amending the motion to have legal review, just like if extending this agreement would constrain future options for that site? Just the controllable is...
Yes, I understand what you say. Yes, and that is sort of the intent of what I...
Okay.
Yeah, of what...
I thought that's what you meant. I just didn't know if you're okay with that.
I am fine with that.
And yeah, I agree.
We could
Councillor
also
Kester?
change it so it's just for 5 years, no automatic renewals.
Yeah, yeah, that might be the easiest way to do it.
Even that still would put it out to like 2029. Because it's already in place till the end of 2024.
Right, well, yeah.
So depending on where we go with fire service, there may,
They won't be building nothing there in 5 years. No, I doubt. Just thought.
Yeah, I think if we just allow, if like. give-
my personal preference would be, yeah, to get the review first and then we could look at timelines and whatnot.
Could very well be just a 5-year, might be fine, but.
Yeah, or a different clause,
Right.
like if we were to relocate the fire service or something. Okay. Is everybody clear on the motion? Any other questions or discussion? Is any counselor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.410, Local Improvement Plan, Redland Water Servicing.
Again, Bryce Mackin from Manager of Technical Services. In December of 2020, the Wheatland Regional Corporation completed Phase 3 of the regional water system. This phase included extending the WRC water transmission line to Rosebud, connecting into Rosebud's existing potable water distribution system. The new transmission line passes through the community of Redland, which currently does not have a water distribution system installed. The residents of Redland have expressed an interest in the opportunity this WRC water line presents to them as a potential source for the supply of potable water within the community. On July 11th, 2022, administration held an engagement session with the property owners in Redland and presented information about the local improvement plan process as defined in Division 7 of the Municipal Government Act, specifically as it pertains to the installation of a potable water distribution system within Redland. As part of this engagement, administration reviewed possible designs and layouts of a county-owned and operated potable water system to try and service as many residents as possible in the area that were interested in participating in the local improvement. Using the inputs from the engagement session and from legal counsel, administration brought forward the local improvement plan, Redland Water Servicing, to the September 20th, 2022 council meeting for consideration. As per Council Resolution CM 2022-0969, administration held a community engagement meeting on October 17th, 2022, with the Redland residents to present the proposed local improvement plan, Redland Water Servicing. Invitations were mailed and hand-delivered to all property owners of Redland. The meeting was attended by 5 property owners and by Councillor Kester, with the presentation delivered by Brad Bullock, GM of Transportation and Agriculture, and myself, Bryce Mackin, Manager of Technical Services. Residents brought forward many concerns with the local improvement plan, focused mainly on the cost to the residents. On October 24th, administration sent out requests to all residents that attended to provide any feedback, concerns, comments, and or suggestions that they would like to share with Wheatland County Council, as Council is considering the next steps. Administration set a deadline of November 4th, 2022 for all submissions. Included as attachments are all the written responses received by administration. Currently, administration is recommending that Council accepts this report, including the attached letters from Redland residents, as information. Thank you.
Any questions for administration? Or council's wishes?
I move that council accepts the following report, including the attached letters from Redland residents as information.
Any questions or discussion?
I'll second that.
Sorry, pardon me, Councillor Larison?
I will second Councillor Kester's motion.
I think as per our procedural bylaw, we don't require seconders. Any other questions or discussion? Is any councillor, oh, sorry.
I'm reading the letters here and I've read them several times and I just want to say I'm not opposed to to, like, I want these people to have water. But if we look at having the possible subsidization of this, we should look at all our hamlets and lay out a ground rules for what we would do moving forward for unserviced areas. I don't think it's fair to look at one in particular. And if just something, a suggestion would be that we look at them all and lay out some kind of thing for administration to know moving forward, because in the future, we may come up with this. I can think of several small hamlets in the area that may benefit from this. It could be something that comes up in the future with West Side Servicing Plan. Thinking of Cheadle, thinking of things like that.
Exactly.
Maybe council should look at this again as a more of a whole view and possible input of funding, a baseline or something. This is something that I'm suggesting that I want these, I want the residents of the county to benefit from these projects, but also there was no servicing there before, and I have to recognize that fact. So we're hearing that, so I don't know, just a thought.
So is this somehow different than the lakes of Muirfield?
So any of our Muirfield, Carsland, Gleason, all those were put in by a developer at some point, and we end up inheriting those infrastructure, and at some point we will rebuild it 50, 60 years down the road. But initially, the vast majority of these, I think probably all of them, were never put in by the county.
Rosebud was a partnership with, it was a partnership with, themselves that put in the $4,000. Remember a few years ago, why is this $4,000 on? That originated in Rosebud, and they paid it for years and years till this council decided everybody should pay it. And then we had another discussion. No, nobody pays it. But anyway, they put in 4, county put in money, province put in money. They had existing infrastructure, with each had their own water wells. Aquifer got drawn down and the water wells weren't functioning anymore. Same as in Redland. Their water wells are dry. And yeah, the county has helped out before. We have always, we're supporting the internet going into the Cheadle area, and no improvement tax there for that area. It's just future development's going to pay for it. We always, we have, I shouldn't say always, we've always, we try and support everybody in the county. Okay. As far as a water line going by Nightingale, well, when that happens, I think that consideration could be made, same as it's going by Redland now. Why would we plan into the future about a water line when we don't know if it ever will happen? It's there. They're asking for help. They, this proposal that was up, there was a couple of them, would cost them $47,000 times 2, and all they want is one water tap. $100,000. That's $47,000. Your monthly payments or yearly payments are more than double their taxes. I think we can do a better job. I agree with Scott. We've got to come up with something.
I know in Carsland they had, the infrastructure was given to the county, but there was improvements done, and it was debentured. It was debentured on the water side and debentures on the, when they fixed the lagoons. So we've had 2 different debentures. I mean, that's the way to go. So it stays with the land. So as long as the land is, someone owns the land, it's always there. Which is more, it's monthly, but it's, I know there's only 5 people there, but.
The debentures did not cover 100% of it.
Exactly. So I don't know what it covered. I don't know. That was a long time ago.
Thinking Rosebud, I can't tell the exact, but I'm thinking maybe their debenture, if it covered 10% of the cost of their new water reservoir, there was insurance money, county put in money, and the residents did the debenture. Can't remember the percentage at Carsland.
I wouldn't know that, but, maybe that's something that.
CAO Henderson.
Go back to the board, go back to the drawing board and figure something out through debentures? I don't
It's
know.
been going on 3 years. They're hauling water right now.
That's why I say we
Well,
can't
we're
really
dry.
leave this alone.
CAO Henderson and then Councillor Eckert.
Yes, just through administration. Administratively, we have been discussing to kind of come up with a solution on this. Administration feels like a good solution would be a policy for defined hamlets or areas within the county would benefit from a policy or framework that would help council make this consistent decisions on this. Councillor Kester has raised some excellent points on Redland, where that $4,000 amount was charged previously, then it got applied to the whole county, then it got kind of removed from the county. We feel like potentially like a framework or policy that is discussed at the committee of the whole, and council provides some direction to administration on how to implement that, so it is consistent treatment across the board in the future, where council or Wheatland County faces situations where we inherit lands or existing lands are there without that infrastructure. How can council consistently treat that and be fair and equitable to everyone? And we do think that that would be an excellent kind of committee of the whole discussion, and kind of work on that policy or framework for council to approve at a future council meeting, perhaps. So the conversation kind of just refers back to a framework or policy where most of the decision-making process is actually removed from it, where council again agrees to a policy or framework to kind of work within.
So, yeah, there has to be something, there has to be a policy set. Because if we do not set this policy with the development that is going to be coming on the west side, there are going to be developers that are going to say, well, hold it, what did you do? What did you do in Redlands, and why does that not affect us? So that could be in existing, and I've got 37 houses or whatever in the hamlet of Cheadle. There will be water line coming somewhere close to them, and they will be demanding whatever. And we can't, it has to be something that there has to be a policy, because if we just say we're just going to let these guys do it, that will come back and bite us, because they, everybody else is watching what we're doing right now and saying, well, they gave them X amount of dollars. So yeah, I agree with the policy and coming back to committee at the whole, and then figure out what that number is going to be.
I'm just thinking of possible motions, not just possible, but direct administration to bring this back to committee whole and review all existing or previous funding models for this type of thing, like hamlets or whatever we've done, and how we've done. Some we've had debentures, some we've had things like that, and just come up with, what I'm looking for is kind of a percentage overall of what we've done, and that gives us something to work with, and if it's amenable to, we're in budget right now, maybe we can have some kind of placeholder for something, but it may be too late, but does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that council maybe should consider just defining it as utilities.
Okay.
Just because then you can cover more than just like water servicing, where
for sure, yeah,
it just like just a general broad scope, and administration would be tasked with bringing back some information for council to consider at the committee as a whole. We
do have a motion on the floor to accept for information. We can certainly.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's good conversation. We can entertain a second motion following. I do think this was a really good process that we went through, and I am interested in the historical context and some of the information around the debentures and that type of thing, but I actually see this as a potential model that we could use going forward. It aligns with some of the principles that we have discussed around striving towards cost recovery in terms of service provision that is not provided to the entire county. So we're in, as rural municipalities, we're in unique situations that are distinctly different from urbans, where urbans typically are providing the same utility servicing to all of their ratepayers. Whereas in, like, because of the vast geography, we're not. We are going to have further unique situations within Wheatland where there is servicing either running, you know, adjacent or through a community or a hamlet, and that could expand in the future. I do think we want to be careful about precedents that we're setting, and that we're staying consistent to some of the principles that we have had discussion around in the past, and also just being cognizant that we're not required, or we're not guaranteeing water service provision, and that there could be further challenges with wells like not producing or not providing water in the future. There are alternatives, and I know it's not ideal at all. I know other residents in other municipalities that have always relied on cisterns, and actually there are other folks in this county as well that have cisterns and truck their water in due to issues with wells or that type of thing. So there is alternative solutions. The number that was quoted, we have to also be mindful of, did include financing. So that would be to make that number potentially more attainable, I guess, to pay that out. But then again, if we're striving towards cost recovery for the county to finance that, I think there's some rationale for that not necessarily to be an interest-free loan, like not a loan, but you know what I mean, like for that financing provision. I like the local improvement tax because there is that provision that, it's not the right language, but essentially guarantee recovery of the costs, whereas some other models may not may not include that provision. It's definitely complex. Also, just, and I know we all know this, but I'm just reminding myself, I have neighbors also in a community in the county that at times have spent $25,000 or $30,000 because they've had, you know, a utility failure, whether it's septic or a well, sometimes actually even significantly more than that if there's challenges with like finding water when they're drilling. And then they would, depending on how they finance that, there could be additional financing costs that could be very similar to this. And I know that's challenging, but when I look at it personally, it's trade-offs. I love where I live, and I recognize that there's pros and cons to that. And that's in no way to minimize the challenges when people are trying to address servicing issues. It can be really stressful for people in rural communities, and everything's different. Snow removal is different, like accessing, you know, there's just different realities when you are choosing to live in a rural municipality. I do like the idea of getting that historical information. I think that will be just good information to have. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Yeah, like I know quite a few people that have smaller subdivisions, acreages, that would pay this in a second to have that service, because every 5-10 years they're drilling a well at 20,000-30,000, and it's no guarantee, and it could be less than a gallon per minute. So it's a countywide thing. WRC does have the ability to help rules along the edge of that line. There is a provision for that. The hamlet is different, and that's where we're at. And yeah, I think we should accept it as information, and then a further motion to review this and look at a framework or a policy that we move forward for everybody. So when this happens again, because it probably will, we councils in the future can go, okay, this is what we need to do, and here's where we move forward.
And I guess I am a little bit concerned just about the tone and some of the comments and some of the correspondence, just in terms of, like, I think we need to be clear that, and I think you alluded to this, that we have been actively trying to help the ratepayers in Redland. Administration has put a substantive amount of work into following council's direction, and Councillor Kester's motions that council supported. And all of this is to help provide that service. And the local improvement tax was a way to not have that large upfront cost and to try and help spread that out, but at the same time trying to be fair to all of our ratepayers. And just, yeah, like, I think we've been actively trying to make this work. And it does come down to, it is very expensive to do service delivery in vast, geographic areas. And I think we also have to be cognizant that we do have requirements to ensure that the provision of those services are done in such a way that we're making sure that, the proper engineering is done and that we're ensuring that long-term this is a good solution and that we're not setting the county up for future liabilities around a critical service like water and that type of thing. Councillor Kester?
If I was putting this water in, if I lived that far away from the pipeline, I would put it in. Dig a ditch, put it in. So that's what the Redland we're talking about. They got a price of around $80,000. They can get the ditch dug and the pipeline put in. The county helps, so we got to get an engineer, we got to get this, we got to get that, and it costs $300,000 thereabout. So they look at it as an upgrade for the county of $220,000. The county should put in the $220,000. They don't need it. It's for the future of somebody else moving in. They can do it for $80,000. They asked help for the $80,000. If you could debenture the $80,000, not the $300,000. That's quite a difference. I know it costs more for municipalities, but why does it cost $500 for a toilet seat? Like, why does it? Nobody knows, but that's what it costs. And no different here. And that's what they're upset about. And I don't have an answer for them. Why does our vault cost $90,000 when you can go to WRC and get it for $8,000? Why does the county want one for that much? Those questions haven't been answered. So you want to look at it again? I think get the prices nailed down. Nobody's going to sign up for a $90,000 vault, and in all reality, it only costs $7,000. And won't charge you so much when you sign you up. You would never buy a car like that. They're frustrated, and I don't really blame them. That $300,000 is a lot of money. They've been a hamlet, I don't know for how long. They've been there since the railway went through. There used to be grain elevators there. It's probably 100 years old. There was no developer there.
I don't know if administration could review, again, just I don't think I have my notes with me, but there was some discussion around, there were some distinctions between a quote that was originally produced that was requested by the general manager of Wheatland Regional Corporation. And then I think there were some distinctions between that and what we were working off of for the local improvement tax. And I don't know if council wants to review that, but from my recollection, there were some distinctions, things that were included in the proposal that was integrated into the local improvement tax that were not, that would have been addressed individually, if I recall correctly, through the other quote. And forgive me, this is not my area of expertise, and I do not recall what those distinctions were, but there were elements that would have been additional costs to each individual ratepayer to be equivalent to what Wheatland County was considering proposing. And from my recollection, there was some rationale for the way administration was sort of modeling the project, potential project.
Yeah, through the Reeve, there are some differences between the quotes, and the differences between the way the design was laid out. That is something administration could do if council directed us to bring those two back and kind of do a comparison between those two for council's information.
I think that might be good too, even just for communication, just so that it's really clear, and break down also the financing piece of that so that that's very clear too. It would be helpful for me just to have a more clear understanding of that.
Just through the Reeve, the original quote wasn't provided to the county directly, but I do think we have access to that, and so we could just double check with who that quote was provided to and just make sure that they're.
I think it was WRC asked their engineering company, MPE, at one of the meetings if they could provide that engineering type study. Yeah. There was no parameters put on it. They just asked them. Then when I come back, we thought, yeah.
We'll be taking this to the committee of the whole.
Yes, so the current motion we're considering is to accept for information, and then we could entertain a second motion for further information to come back to committee of the whole. We'll start with this motion. Any further questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. And then perhaps a motion directing administration to bring some historical context information around utility service provision and debenturing, as well as just analysis of the distinctions between the quote that Councillor Kester is referencing and the model that administration was integrating into the local improvement tax. Project design.
So you're looking for a cost breakdown of past debentures, percentage of what the community put in?
Just floating that as a potential, yeah.
And then a comparison of the two different quotes that there are. I believe there's only two. The MPE isn't really even a quote. It's an engineering study. There's a difference between a quote and an engineering study. You look in our budget, and that's road costs $6 million. We put away $6 million. We go and build it, and only costs us $5 million. There we got a surplus. It happens all the time.
Yeah, so I think I was just referencing, even if it's just clarity around the modeling that the local improvement tax was based on, and what that included. And then if we, for my clarity, I'll need to compare that to the quote that was also provided. I don't think there was board direction for the quote that came, but I think it was provided to WRC, to the general manager. And I'm not making that motion, that's what I'm hearing from the discussion that has taken place so far. Shanna may be able to capture it from our recording. Okay.
I have that council direct administration to bring historical information around utility service provisions and debenturing, as well as an analysis of the two quotes for the pipeline back to the committee of the whole. Go ahead.
Just a point from administration. Would council consider making those two separate motions? I feel like those two actions are significantly different.
Definitely.
And I also think that one could be taken care of right away. And then the other one, the committee of the whole discussion would probably take a little bit longer because it would need some fundamental and decision making from council, where the other one, administration, could probably get it back for the December 6th meeting. I believe the work is done. So it just we'd just get that one into the December 6th meeting. So if council would consider breaking those into two separate motions, I think administration would prefer that.
Yeah, we appreciate the advice. Council's wishes.
Hey, I'll move that council direct administration to bring back a comparison of the quote that was provided to Councillor Kester compared to the, no?
It did come to council. We were
Oh.
provided it.
Okay, to council,
The quote provided to the residents of
the residents of.
It was provided to council
an
May,
engineering report.
for the May 3rd, 2022 council.
Okay, so it was provided, okay, so the report provided in May 2022 versus the engineering study and proposed costs that were developed in-house.
Yeah, or just whatever, like the project design costing information that was integrated into the local improvement tax proposal, I guess.
Beautiful.
Is everybody clear? Any questions or discussion? Is any counselor opposed? Motion is carried.
I'll try. I'll move that we, bring historic, data on, water or utilities to, committee of the whole and to gather information to come up with a policy for, county wheatland utilities.
Any questions or discussion? Is any counselor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.411, snow plowing update.
Yes, thank you. Bryce, Manager of Technical Services, presenting. Staff has updated, or is presenting an updated Public Works Policy, Section 937, snow plowing, to add a portion of roadway in the Lakes of Muirfield that was recently changed from private ownership to public roadway. This added portion of roadway was previously being maintained by the county in the winter months as per an agreement with the previous owners. Because the snow plowing work for these added roads were already being completed by county forces as part of this prior agreement, there are no impacts to Public Works operations due to this policy update. The update will be to the Lakes of Muirfield map in the addendum section of the policy as per the attached update, and I'll scroll down to that page. There we go. So according to this, it says page 170 of the agenda package. The section being added is the road from Range Road 264 and through the community and up through the boulevard. That section was stage 1 and was previously owned by the HOA as per, and now is currently road plan as part of public roadways. And that's my presentation. Any questions?
Any questions for administration?
Hi, thank you for this. There was a discussion too about the sidewalks there. Were you at that as well? And then the mailboxes, I get asked about that, and I said, I just want a clarification for the residents, who does what?
Certainly. So as per the county bylaw, sidewalks are the responsibility of the adjacent property owners. For any county-owned properties, we take care of the sidewalks, and we also take care of the mailboxes. We have had some recent conversations with a member of the HOA regarding that fact, and they've also provided some more information that will be that administration is reviewing for an upcoming discussion. Currently, the county owns very few properties in the community, as most of them have been sold. So a lot of the properties throughout the community, even though empty, are owned by private owners.
Thank you. And then I'll let them, the HOA know, and if there's problems with some of those, there's a process for that for complaints, and then we could end up doing it and charge it back or what, vice versa.
Yeah, through the chair, I can confirm that that communication has already started with the HOA, and we are working with them right now.
I'll make the motion that council approve amendments made to the Public Works Policy 9.3.7 snow plowing as presented in the RFD.
Any questions or discussion? Is any counselor opposed? Motion is
Opposed.
carried.
I have a question, not pertaining to Muirfield, but pertaining to, so Speargrass, entrance is a private road now? Who snowplows that? Is that the county? It used to be Highway 24? So it's Highway X because it's not even labeled Road X.
Your way.
Bigger way, yeah.
Another gift.
Yeah, I'll go back. Thank you.
All of us have to go out there with our,
Just while administration's conferring on that, I did hear opposition for our last motion, so I'm going to do a roll
sorry.
call vote. That's okay. Councillor Larson, did you want to speak to your concern?
No, I am opposed.
Okay. We'll do a roll call vote. Reeve Link is in favor. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
In favor.
Councillor LaPrice.
In favor.
Councillor Bigger.
in favor?
Councillor Eichert.
In favor.
Councillor Kester.
Being that we're doing this, I'll stay in favor.
Councillor Larson.
I think I've already made my motion. Or made my vote, sorry.
Thank you. Motion is carried.
Sorry, just to answer the other question through the Reeve, that road, I believe, will be a public right-of-way still. I can check into that to confirm. It won't be run by or maintained by Alberta Transportation, however. And so the county, they've left it to the county to name that road to what we want to name it to, and then the county would maintain that, is my understanding. However, I can take that away and just confirm that and bring it back to council for information.
So,
microphone.
So you're, we plow it? Like you guys are gonna plow it?
Yeah, that would be a county responsibility
Okay.
to do that, to maintain that road.
So it brings me to the next one. So we have a very, and you can talk to the Hamlet crew, there's a big drifting problem right at the very front of Speargrass by the pillars. It's always plugged. So if the truck is coming in to do the road, not to come into the Speargrass, but to just kind of go around where we plug in and then go out, where we get really plugged, because we wait for the Hamlet truck to come to dig us out. But if that big truck is coming sooner, if he could do that turnaround for us, I mean, he has to turn around anyway. They could just go through and turn around that way.
Yeah, through the Reeve, we'll look into
That'd be great.
whole issue, and if that works, then we can.
And if it's not named, it's probably off subject, but if it's not named, is the community allowed to name it?
And I'm totally opposed to that. There's a lot of roads that don't get plowed.
Pardon me?
There is no reason that we need to be specifically speaking of, whether it's Speargrass or Carsland or whatever.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Sorry, can you just repeat that, Councillor Larson? A little bit louder, or if you're able to just turn the volume up a little bit?
Just for all of council's consideration, I believe Councillor Larson may be discussing the snow plowing, and the snow plowing has been voted on. I believe now Councillor Bigg is just talking more about a road naming. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or is it more an operational concern of an existing
Well,
county
no,
road?
well, the operation, I was just worried about who was, because that's not a highway anymore. Volker Steffen did it, but now it's not named, so Volker Steffen isn't coming in to do it. I just wanted to make sure that the county were the ones responsible to making sure that it is getting plowed, and if they do plow it, just to, yeah, and then about the naming of it. I mean, if it's something you want to discuss later, that's fine too.
Yeah, I think administration is going to have to take this one back. We appreciate the notice on the operational, the notification on the operational side of it too. And for the road naming, I think this is a fairly unique situation where the county hasn't experienced this before, or at least in the recent memory of a road naming item. But we'll take that one back and get some information to council.
Thank you.
So just curious as to where now, if it snows like it has been, who's looking after it right now?
That's the questions I've been asked, and they just said that they were.
We're doing it?
Administration, will look at the issue
We'll
and
look
bring
at it.
something back.
The road got plowed though.
I wasn't there. Must have. I think the Hamlet truck was the one that unstuck us, but I don't know about the main road, about the private road.
Yeah, through the REIT, we will look into this. It is still an existing construction project as well. So between the county and AT and how that's working right now, we'll just confirm that and bring it back with those who are more involved with the details of the project.
Perfect. We will move to 2.412, joint servicing study with the town of Strathmore.
Good morning, Council. Brad Bullock presenting. So Wheatland County's West Side Servicing Study is in progress. The initial phase of the study currently being executed examines and ranks based on various factors, various servicing infrastructure options for water and wastewater and stormwater. The initial phase of the study is soon to be completed. The West Side Servicing Study includes the preliminary investigation of water and wastewater servicing options that, if eventually approved and executed, would see Wheatland County utilizing transmission and treatment infrastructure owned by other municipalities. So that would obviously take council approval as well as discussions and approval of our neighboring councils of the neighboring municipalities as well. Examples of such options include obtaining potable water from the East Chicago Regional Water Pipeline and wastewater transmission and treatment using infrastructure and facilities in Rocky View County and or in the town of Strathmore. Preliminary work completed for the West Side Servicing Study indicates that due to their overall low cost per capita population service and other factors, intermunicipal servicing infrastructure solutions do tend to rank high on the list of options relative to other options considered. However, that full report is still to come to council later on, prior to the end of the year. On November 9th, 2022, the town of Strathmore Council met to discuss potentially partnering with Wheatland County to complete a shared joint servicing study with Wheatland County. The town council approved the resolution provided below, and the full report presented to the town of Strathmore's council is attached to this report for information. I can read that resolution. That council authorized, this is the resolution made by town of Strathmore, that council authorize up to a maximum of $25,000 from the stabilization reserve for administration to complete a cost shared joint servicing study with Wheatland County should the county select connection to and or integration with the existing town and regional water supply, wastewater treatment, and stormwater infrastructure that is currently owned by the town as preferred options upon completion of its West Side Servicing project in December 2022. That concludes the report, and there are two recommended resolutions in front of council, and I'm here for any question.
Any questions from council? You have a question?
Yes, question. Before I want to make this decision, I'd like to see what other options are available out there. I know we've talked to other municipalities. Are they looking for similar, like, we're going to spend $25,000, we're going to put $50,000, and going back to Councillor Kester about the previous one about why these things are so expensive. This is hiring somebody to review a bunch of information that I think our professionals would have most of this, being that EPCOR runs Strathmore's and things like that. But just wondering if we have enough information here to make a decision.
Yeah.
We've looked in several other
areas.
Building on Deputy Reeve Clausen's comments, sorry, you go first, Councillor.
No, I'm just, we also have this similar thing with Rocky View, do we not? Like, a similar request?
Through the Reeve, as part of the West Side Servicing Study, administration has had some conversations with administration of the town of Strathmore and with Rocky View, very preliminary conversations, just in terms of gathering information and putting together the report that we are right now. The summary of that report is expected to be presented to council in a presentation in the next council meeting, and then the full report prior to the end of the year, which will give some more information and show where those various options have ranked in comparison to each other.
Just building on Deputy Reeve Clausen and Councillor Eichert's comments, and looking at the motion that the town of Strathmore passed, where the funding is contingent on the county selecting connection and or integration with existing town, and they specifically reference upon completion of the West Side Servicing. Are we going to have a challenge actioning this prior to completing that West Side Servicing? And like, it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing, because we're going to want as comprehensive of information as possible in sort of finalizing that strategy. But it looks like the town's is contingent on the decision to connect to the town. So it could be challenging to action at this time, but it could also be challenging to make a final decision without comprehensive information. Councillor Kester.
I also think, past experience, we should approach the city of Calgary or find out who has approval to use City of Calgary water. We went through this a long time ago, got the pipe built, and time to turn on the tap, and City of Calgary wouldn't give us any water. Got a new council there now, maybe it's different. I don't know if Strathmore can give us water. I would like to know that before we start spending money on a study. Whose water is it? Does Strathmore have the authority to sell it to us? Because at one time, it wasn't there.
I would assume that the pipeline is basically just a conveyance tool, is it not? That we would have to, the county would have to provide license in order to push water through that pipeline, I would believe.
I don't think Airdrie has any license, yet they get how much water. I don't think Okotoks has license for the water they're going to get from the city. And I don't believe Chestermere has any water license, and they get water from the city. I don't think the license part, Calgary just uses it. They got license for 3 million people. There is a long history here that's a lot of, but I remember reading the original contract with the city of Calgary, and you have to get okay for them for everything, but that was a previous council. We should check into it before we start spending money if it's possible to get water. Because we were in talks for a couple of years and we sized that pipeline. We got numbers. We're the only partner with Strathmore. And Rocky View needed partnership to get Water for Life money. And then Chestermere needed water, so they become a partner and they didn't need the county anymore. And they went ahead and put it in. So make sure we can get something out of the end before we put it in. That's all I'm saying. Is all it takes is a meeting with Cal administration can find out what the process is. It's not Strathmore's water.
Yeah, and I think when administration had shared before, they had shared a historical agreement with council October 27th that outlines that the town would need to support our request. And I think administration had advised that previously it would be basically like that two-step, having the conversation with the town and making the request to the city. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some thought that if there were to be licensed, that could increase the potential probability of Calgary, entering into an agreement. But that definitely needs to be explored. Definitely complexities around it for sure. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
And I was thinking further too about the organization that we just pulled out of has oversight over this kind of thing. And what other partner we go through, it may have to go to that board to support that. Because servicing is part of that board.
Yep, potentially.
So I think there's a lot more layers to this than we realize. And I agree with Councillor Kester. I think we should go to the city first and find out what they're thinking, and then it comes, you know, water flows downhill. So I think this is too early for this, to be honest. I don't think it's a bad idea, but I don't think now we can make that decision. That's just me. I think it's too early. We don't know which way we need to go and how we need to go there. And we don't even know how much water they really potentially they need as a developer, right? So.
Question to administration. Part of this also is regarding the wastewater, which we are trying to like on a more expedited, well, they both need to be expedited, but the wastewater is distinct and separate from like a larger region, like it's very much a sub-regional matter. There are opportunities, like there have been multiple options proposed for addressing that as well. Would it be advisable to look at a study like this? And I don't know how you integrate in the other options, just so that we can progress the wastewater, given that it's a little bit simpler because it doesn't have like the city of Calgary included in that. Would it make sense to break that out? Recognizing that there's been like historical conversations and preliminary discussions with Rocky View County. Does it make sense to invest in this with the town, or do we need to flesh that out a bit more? Councillor Kester?
I don't have a problem going ahead with the study, wastewater, stormwater, as long as when you're looking at the water, you include the city of Calgary. And if it's a no-go, then you don't have to go down that avenue. But we still need the wastewater and the stormwater. So
and that's a good idea.
I don't want to stand in front of that, but just get our ducks lined up before we start.
I like the idea of integrating the city of Calgary, like at least requesting them to participate as well. And it might give us more fulsome information, because really we can't make a decision until we have approached them anyway. Or I mean, we could make a decision, but we could be thwarted potentially. So yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if administration has any advice or recommendations on a potential path forward.
Yeah, through the Reeve, and I probably should have included this as part of the report. As part of the overall West Side Services study, we are investigating a number of various options for water, wastewater, and stormwater solutions with the county. The intention with this first phase of the study is to look at all of these options and really narrow it down to not necessarily one, but a short list of options to investigate, which may involve a joint servicing solution with Rocky View or Strathmore or Wheatland County alone. And so it's anticipated that some of these options will rank quite high. However, if council wanted to, we could wait for the fruition of that study, narrow it down to the short list, and then approach Strathmore about this joint servicing study. We could approach it that way, but the intention really is to come up with a short list. Because there's so many options, it was just too big of a study to look into every single option in great detail. So once we have that short list, the intention was then to approach the other municipalities if council said, yes, please go work more so with Rocky View or go work with Strathmore or Calgary and have those more detailed conversations and talk about potential detailed agreements or joint servicing collaboration. then we would do that at that time. It was just too large of a study with too many options to do that with every single option at the time, and so the intention is to shortlist it first.
Hearing the discussion, I'll make the motion to accept this as information for now. And then, upon such time as we review what you're just discussing about further, we need further information to make the proper decision.
Any questions or discussion? One question. Oh, go ahead, Councillor.
So you're saying when they get the short list done to come back to us?
Yeah.
For sure. Okay.
Yeah, I think you'll be bringing the list and then council will like basically make a decision around the shortlisting. Question, would it make sense to concurrently approach the town of Strathmore to see if they might consider amending their resolution? My rationale is that I think it will be difficult for us, like based on the town's current motion, they would not be able to enter into the joint servicing agreement on a short list. They would need like a commitment to connect, and it's going to be a chicken and an egg thing where it's going to be challenging for us to commit to a decision because I'm assuming some of the town's terms like costing, pricing, allocations, capacity that they could treat, things like that could hinge on what this joint study may sort of show or demonstrate. Would you accept an amendment to direct administration to correspond with the town of Strathmore administration to see if there might be an appetite to reconsider their motion for them to enter into the study prior to our commitment, because it will be challenging for us to make a commitment without knowing the terms, which could flow from, like, should be a result of this study or may influence.
Do we need a study in order to get the information? Like, could we not just ask Strathmore for information as we, like, do we need to actually? I don't know.
It's my understanding there was a report presented to council that was released from an in-camera session by a councillor. And it was in I think, did we get it in a package here?
Yeah, we did get that report. Just as a side note, I was in a meeting with the town administrator, and he's pretty clear that he thought the study was necessary to kind of move forward with it. So, just kind of given that information as well. Council could also just choose to defer and wait until December. It's only a month away, and see where that shortlist comes in, and maybe just think about this potential motion in the meantime. Just another option for council to consider.
Yeah, I like that.
Would you consider the amendment just to share this? I mean, this is a public meeting. The town could be aware of this conversation, but I wouldn't mind directly just conveying sort of the timing challenge that we may experience. And the reason I'm raising this, and I would implore council to consider it today, is we do want to expedite this servicing strategy as much as possible, because this is a significant constraint for potential developers, and they are contemplating this when looking at site selection factors. So the faster we can have a strategy in place and a timeline that we can, publicly share and that developers can contemplate when they're looking at locations, I think it would be advantageous for the county. And I'm concerned if we don't clearly ask the town, then we'll be in a position in December where if the town of Strathmore is on the short list, we could pass a motion, but it would not be a joint study because it would not meet the requirements for their motion. Unless we're committing at that point, which I feel like there would be information that would result from this study that we would require to make that final decision. Cart before the horse, kind of. Would you accept?
Wait till next month.
Yeah.
See what the short list is. Like, we're thinking, if that, why not just, we've got time, we've got a month, wait for the short list and have another discussion. If they're even on the short list or if they're not.
Well, I think we saw preliminary information that was quite favorable. That was already presented. I'm trying to remember if that was in an open session.
I have no problem with sharing with,
when the engineers were.
town of Strathmore Council and their administration that we're, we have to get some more information and, where we're at. I think they can respect that.
Well, and it's up to, I mean, they may not amend the motion, but that, that may
I guess would
influence
they,
what
would
the
they
potential
consider
options
just
are as
providing, sanitary is what you're thinking, right? Possibly.
Yeah, no idea at this point. I'm just trying to expedite things. And so my rationale for not waiting is then we come back, we make a short list. We're still in the same situation where the town could be on the short list, but we don't have a partner in a joint servicing study because we would not be prepared to commit at that point. So would you accept the amendment? I can do a separate motion after if that's easier.
It'd probably be better.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine.
appreciate it.
So we have a motion on the floor to accept as information. And was there a second clause? Just to accept as information. Okay. Any further questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Council have any further wishes?
I think you were discussing a possible motion.
I just don't like making them.
I guess I feel that, and I don't know if my thoughts are right, but if this was coming to us, would we approve the study with not knowing if we're on the short list or not, right? You know what I mean? Well, how would we vote on it?
But right now, they have it so they are not prepared, they do not have council direction to enter into the joint servicing study unless there's a commitment to partner with the town or to use the town services, whether it's water, wastewater, stormwater. And all I'm suggesting, so I guess even perhaps I'll make a motion that we direct administration to communicate to the town of Strathmore our process regarding the West Side servicing strategy, whereby we will be first doing deciding on a short list for potential servicing strategies and the timeline around that. And I'll leave it at that. And then all we're doing is providing that step to the town that will be happening. And then that leaves the ball in the town's court if they're open to considering a joint study without a firm commitment to selecting their services. And it will just give us more information in that regard, but it ensures that communication is done versus, somebody just knowing we discussed it. It's clear communication with a neighbor and a potential partner. I'll make that motion. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. I did see lunch did arrive. Perhaps we will break. Is 12:45 enough time for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, we will recess until 12:45 and then reconvene.
Thank you.
Call the meeting back to order. I believe we're at 3.1, correspondence and information items. We have a request for support from the CPAA and correspondence from the Village of Standard, outcomes from their organizational meeting, and information about the utilization of their infrastructure, the grant funding provided by the county. Council's wishes.
Motion to accept as information.
Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We had an addition to closed session. Agenda item 4, advice from officials re governance review. I'll move us into closed session. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. I'll move us out of closed session. Is any counselor opposed? Motion is carried. There was one motion arising from closed session.
I'll move that we direct administration to get a quote and a scope for council governance review.
Any questions or discussion? Is any counselor opposed? Motion is carried. That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.